Hi, this is Jen Rubin, and this is Jen Rubin's Green Room. It's Friday, the day after the debate, and another day under our belts of Supreme Court madness. So let's start with the debate. Get a grip. That's my advice to Democrats. Was the president fumfering? Did he look old? Did he not take advantage of openings? Yes. It was not a good performance, to put it mildly. On the other hand, Trump lied nonstop, as is being documented by everyone, including CNN's fact checker, and let us in on what he really thinks. He really does think that repealing Roe v. Wade was a great thing. He really does think he did nothing wrong on January 6th. He really does think that it would be fine to round up 11 million illegal immigrants. On and on. He let the cat out of the bag that he really is an isolationist. There's a big ocean between us and Europe, he declares. Yeah, right. He is what we always knew him to be, a liar, a criminal, and a bully. Now, does this fundamentally change the race? It really shouldn't, because going in, we knew that Biden was old. We knew that Trump was a liar and a criminal. And people who would overlook Trump's threat to democracy, would overlook his clear statement of really cruel and unusual policy, who would disregard his contempt for the rule of law, they're going to be with him no matter what. The question is, will Democrats keep it together? I will let you in on a secret, which is not a secret. There is no deus ex machina. No one is going to come in, sweep the president out of the nomination, and magically put someone else in. It doesn't happen. There's no method for it. The chances of this happening are zero. If the president were, for some reason, unable to accept the nomination, it would overwhelmingly be the choice to go to the vice president. So this notion that we're going to pluck out the governor of California, the governor of Michigan, that we're going to play fantasy football, no, it's not happening. This is the nominee. And oh, by the way, the vice president, who did appear on CNN last night, did a superb job. And she said what I would say to you. 90 minutes does not eviscerate 3.5 years of government administration, of fine policy, and of results. And let's face it, the beginning of that debate was not good for the president, but he did get better as time went on, and Trump became more and more unwound, and he became more and more irate, and he became less and less capable of answering anything like a direct policy question. So Biden will remain, and the stories you're hearing that Democrats are planning to get rid of him or insiders are plotting, they have no one, because no one on the record is saying that. And in fact, every single politician, quote, insider has said, no, he's the nominee. The people who are panicking are the pundits. The people who are catastrophizing are the media. And you do not see elected Democrats. You do not see the party officials rushing to get rid of President Biden, because they know what Governor Newsom does, which is you don't throw someone overboard for a bad debate. If that were the case, then neither President Obama, who bombed in his first debate as an incumbent, or later President Reagan, who bombed in a couple of debates, would be the nominee of their respective parties and would eventually become president. It doesn't work like that. So what is the task ahead? The task ahead is as it always was, to make certain people understand this is not a referendum on President Biden. It's not even a contest between two people. It is a question as to whether we want to maintain our democracy. Do we want the rule of law? Do we want to behave decently to one another? Do we want to maintain our alliances? Do we want to have clean water? Do we want to allow women to make their own healthcare decisions? That has not changed. You didn't see President Biden changing his position. You didn't see President Biden forgetting what his position was. He knows what he knows. He knows what he wants to do, and he knows what he has done. And so I would encourage all of you to get off Twitter, to get off social media, and to think about all the things you can do to make sure our democracy survives, because that will be the task ahead. And oh, by the way, in less than 2 weeks, former President Trump, felon Trump, is going to get sentenced in a criminal courtroom in New York for his crimes. And on Monday, we're going to get a ruling from the Supreme Court very late in the game, after they have postponed and given him every possible excuse in the book to delay and delay. We're going to have some kind of ruling, which I am fairly confident is not going to say he is exempt, he is immune from any criminal prosecution. So he's got his issues ahead. And President Biden, on the other hand, will have months of campaigning, of speechifying, a convention, and we'll have a very close election, which is essentially where we started on the evening of June 27, and that's where it's going to be between now and the election. Now, if you needed any further reason to vote for the Democrats, I give you the Supreme Court. First of all, let's not forget, it is an illegitimate court. Justice Gorsuch should not be there, because that was the Merrick Garland seat that the Republicans in the Senate refused to consider. And Amy Coney Barrett shouldn't be there, because by the Gorsuch rule, she should not have been given a hearing or been confirmed. That should have been kept open for President Biden. So it's an illegitimate court, corrupted by graft, obvious in their partisan leanings. And lo and behold, what did we get today? We got a ruling that essentially eviscerates the ability of the government to regulate water, the workplace, clean air, you name it. What the court has said is we, the courts, are going to decide how many particles per million constitute pollution. We, not the administrative experts, are going to decide really how much chemicals can be used in a given solvent in the workplace. We, the courts, are going to decide every picayune little question about regulation, not the executive branch. What gives them the expertise? What gives them the power to do that? There are statutes, and Congress specifically set up administrative agencies to decide these issues. But the court says, no, we're going to decide those issues. We're going to decide what is reasonable. We're going to decide how much regulation is enough. It's an open invitation for judicial tyranny. And you know what it is? It's the result of bribery. This is what Leonard Leo and Harlan Crow have been aiming for. They wanted to disable the administrative state, which is a fancy way of saying regulations that keep people safe and healthy. That was their goal, and they bought themselves a bunch of Supreme Court justices who they have continued to lard up with gifts in order to make their position prevail. That's what we get. We have corrupted the Supreme Court, which in turn has now said courts, not the executive branch, not Congress, are going to decide how to keep us healthy and safe. You trust this court? You trust the judge in Texas who decided that mifepristone should be taken off the shelves? You trust Eileen Cannon to decide what is good for you? I don't think so. This is a disaster, and it's going to lead to chaos, which is what this court specializes in. They create chaos because they go through the precedents, ripping them up without a care in the world as to how it's going to affect ordinary people. So that's what we get. Now, I do want to say there is a ray of sunshine. You won't find it because the New York Times, the other media, has completely misrepresented it. But in a case involving January 6th mobsters and insurrectionists, the court held that a particular statute concerning obstruction of official proceeding, that is, the congressional hearing, the congressional gathering that was to count the electoral votes, that statute can apply to people so long as they're seeking to impair the evidence, destroy documents, essentially make the contents of that official proceeding fraudulent or impaired. What's wrong with that? That's exactly what President Trump is charged with. And frankly, it gives plenty of latitude to keep in place virtually every single one of the January 6th convictions. First of all, most everyone was charged with more than one crime. This is one statute, one part of one statute. So there are, according to the Justice Department, 0 convictions in which this was the only issue. And moreover, we have gobs of people whose purpose, as we saw when they went in there, was to disrupt the voting for the electoral count. That's what Trump sent them to do. He said they're counting the votes, get in there. So of course they were set out to destroy documents. Donald Trump, this statute, as applied to Donald Trump, concerns his ability to falsify the electoral slates. That's what he did. That's the document. This absolutely allows that charge to go forward. And if you had any doubt, look at the concurrence from Ketanji Brown Jackson. And I want to point out how different it is for the court and for America that she is there. It's very obvious to me that in making for that majority, she pushed the court not to knock out a whole slew of January 6th convictions, not to touch the president's prosecution, that she left that almost entirely intact. You could not hope, if you're in favor of prosecuting those people who participated in January 6th, frankly, much better a ruling than this. And if you don't have to take my word, go to my trusted source, Just Security, which is put together by prosecutors, national security experts. It has a bevy of charts explaining just how few cases that this decision affects. You can go look at the Justice Department's statement, which makes clear that no one that they have prosecuted is going to be set free because of this. Yes, there may be a handful, I'm talking like a dozen people who have been charged or convicted or have made plea deals in which those crimes might be reduced to a misdemeanor, but only under that one section of the statute. So, bottom line, let's cut to the chase here. The Supreme Court did not wipe out January 6th convictions willy-nilly, and it did not give President Trump a get-out-of-jail-free card. And the reason they didn't was because Ketanji Brown Jackson and the other liberals were there. And in particular, that she was there to maneuver the court, to push the court in the right direction. So it does matter who's on the court, obviously. You can have horrendous decisions, as we have in the administrative law case, as we did in Dobbs, as we did in a zillion other cases. Or you can have a controlled, restrained court, as we saw in Fisher, when occasionally you see the handiwork of Ketanji Brown Jackson and the other liberals. Now, where does that leave us? Well, wouldn't you know, we haven't had the immunity decision yet. I guess they're leaving it for the very last day of the court. That is on Monday. We're finally going to get the immunity case. Gosh, why do you think it took more than 6 months for the court to figure this out? Why do you think it was that they didn't expedite the case when Jack Smith asked them to consider this back in December? Why do you think it was that they sent a leisurely briefing schedule and then took months to reach a decision? It might just be that the court is corrupt. It might just be that that upside-down flag-flying Justice Alito and Thomas, neither one of whom should be sitting on this decision, because both of them have given up any pretense of judicial impartiality. Wouldn't you think that we would get a regular decision in the ordinary course of business if not for those justices? Of course we would. So what are we going to get on Monday? We're going to get some kind of ruling That does not say what Trump wants it to say, that he can never be prosecuted for anything. It's going to tell us, yeah, some things can be prosecuted. And then it's going to go back down to the lower court, and we're going to have to find out which of those things he's charged with can proceed. Now, what does this do? What has all of this been about? It's been about delay. It's been about the illegitimate Supreme Court's ability to give the president a helping hand, drag this on as long as possible. So if by some chance the trial starts, it could never finish before November. So if you wanted any further reason to vote for the president, debate or no debate, the imperial, corrupt Supreme Court is exactly why your vote is essential. And it's not just them. You're going to have a zillion lower court judges who are then going to be applying these monstrous decisions like regulation of clean air, water, who are going to be nixing regulations right and left, who are going to be recalling FDA-approved medication, who are going to be wreaking havoc on Americans' lives, not just on abortion, but on the whole scope of our workplaces, our economy, our environment. It is a recipe for disaster, and it will get worse, much worse, if Trump has the chance, God forbid, to name more Supreme Court justices and more lower court justices. So, bottom line, President Biden is old. I know. And his opponent is old, and his opponent is dangerous. And he has created a corrupt Supreme Court that is aggregating power unto itself. The court wants us to take the government back to the 1920s and individuals back to the 19th century. That's where we're headed. So, what can we do? You can stop whining. You can stop geschreien. That's a Yiddish term. You can stop lighting your hair on fire and get to work. What do I tell you every single time we get together? You have to vote. You have to make sure people you know vote. You have to get people registered. You have to work for causes that protect democracy. And it's more important than ever because we now see the results of Donald Trump, a dangerous, corrupt Supreme Court in which our lives are less secure, our freedoms are eviscerated, and the dangers to us abroad and at home are greater. So there you have it. If you enjoyed this program and you enjoyed our other programs, please tell your friends. They can follow us and listen at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever they get their podcasts. Just click right there. Bye-bye.